Welcome, dog lovers, to this episode of Dear Dog Fanatic. I'm your host, Kirsten, but you can call me Kay. I am a dog mom of 3, and I run a virtual dog training company called the Canine Detective. The stories we'll be reading and reacting to today are from the Am I the A-hole subreddit, and down the Reddit rabbit hole we go. So it looks like our first story today was reposted into Am I the A-hole and was originally posted on r/relationship advice. It was submitted by user Unsure Big Big, and it says, my fiance isn't speaking to me after I used our money, ours in quotation marks, to help my dog. Not sure how to fix this. Interesting. Okay, well, we'll see. My dog, German Shepherd, began acting strangely a few months ago. First couple of vet visits didn't show anything until eventually we found a large lump under his fur, which was later identified as a tumor. Oh, I'm sorry, that's rough. It was confirmed to be malignant, I'm assuming benign, and required surgery to remove completely. Okay, so silver lining, sucks for surgery, but at least you know A, what is going wrong, and B, it doesn't appear to be fatal at this point. So good news. The vet I spoke to said it would likely cost over $5,000 to remove it completely, and there's no guarantee it will be a success. That sounds, at least where I am, like fairly standard for surgery. I don't know why the cost was so high, but did matter to me. My dog is my dog, and there is no question in my mind that paying for the surgery was the right thing to do. Yeah, and so obviously vet costs vary by area. I don't know where in the world this user is writing in from, but like while 5,000 obviously isn't insignificant, it also doesn't strike me as especially high for a surgical vet visit or surgical appointment for a dog. And it's also another really good reason to get pet insurance. It can save you a lot of money in the long run when freak accidents like this come up, because there are some surgeries that can be well over $10,000. It's not an optional. You have to pay it if you want to save your dog. And so thankfully it looks like this user was able to do so, but it's worth looking into. So OP continues with, I paid for the surgery out of my own savings. This is important. My fiance and I have separate finances, and my savings are easily 5 times what she had saved up. When she found out how much the surgery cost, she went ballistic that I paid for the surgery without asking her when we're planning a wedding. Oof. Okay, red flag. I wish almost I had a red flag so I could wave it here. Yeah, I'm interested to when we get to the punchline of how she can think it's our money. And every couple handles this different. I mean, some people do, when they get married, it's just pure joint account everything. Some people keep things separate. Some do a combo where they have a joint savings and they also keep their separate finances. I am not an accountant like my partner or in the financial sphere, so don't come to me for financial advice. But I just don't see how it is a point of contention for you to spend money on your own dog when you have the separate expenses. If you're going to be policing what one another spends in the private accounts, then that defeats the purpose of the private accounts. Like at that point, I don't know why it's not just all together. Also, freaking out about spending $5,000 when you're saving for a wedding. Your wedding photographer of times is just going to be that much. I'm playing it up here, and it might seem rich coming from me because I'm eloping, so I am not going to. I'm still spending money. It's not going to cost nothing, but it's not going to cost the like $30,000 I think it is on average right now for weddings. And also, it's not in the same bucket. It's not like you decided, hey, I'm going to go spend $5,000 on like this really fun hobby thing while we're trying to save for a wedding. It's literally your dog and your dog's health. A and B, I'm very curious, and I don't know if they'll get into it in the post, but I'm curious to see, like, is paying for the wedding coming out of the joint account or coming out of the separate accounts? Because it's coming out of the joint, it's a moot point anyways. Okay, so continuing, the fiance says that she will have to downsize her wedding to compensate. And my dog is already so old, in parentheses 10, so the money wouldn't go far. I can't even comprehend how she could say that to me. Yeah, immediately no. If you're a dog lover and you love dogs, you should not be with somebody who's going to treat the life of your dog so cavalierly. And I mean, everyone has their own priorities, but I would be side-eyeing somebody who thinks their wedding is more important than a dog's life. And it's not like it's one or the other. You can have both. It's just going to take maybe some more time. Yeah. I'm not thrilled with her response. Okay, so OP continues, my dog is my dog and he's a member of the family. I refuse to put a few $1,000s over his well-being. Very fair. My fiance is acting though I'm being selfish and that our wedding should come first since we're starting a family. And this is like the other weird thing. And this comes down to priorities and what people think are important. But like the wedding day isn't what makes you a family. I mean, making the decision to get married and commit your life to somebody and then acting on that and working as a team, that's what makes you a family. And I don't know how you guys can consider yourself to be on the same team when very clearly your morals aren't aligned in this respect. And then I would be concerned, especially since it mentions starting a family. I don't know if that's referring to children. I would just make sure you're on the same page with somebody before marrying them. Apparently, the fiance hasn't talked to OP since, other than tell them to take out the garbage, clean the dishes, etc. If I try to engage in conversation, she will shut down or walk away. She refuses to talk this over unless I get on my knees, grovel, and apologize. I can't bring myself to do this as a matter of principle and self-respect. So again, I don't know if OP is being melodramatic when they say this last bit here, or if that is what their fiance has explicitly said. But either way, it just sounds like you guys don't have good communication, you don't have the same morals, and you don't have the same financial priorities. So I don't know how you're going to have a sustainable relationship long term. So my question for people here is, how am I supposed to get her to talk to me and patch things up? I don't want to throw away the relationship. At the same time, I feel this is something I cannot compromise on. Alrighty, so let's see what some of our commenters say. So I don't even know how to pronounce this. It's QJFONTL. I don't know. But they say, I'm not going to say don't get married, but definitely don't get married until you resolve this. Like, yeah, exactly that. Like, before you sign the legally binding contract and pledge yourself, whether or not this is religious for this pair or not, like to spend the rest of your life devoted to one another when you haven't resolved this. They say, if you combine your finances after the wedding, how will she react if you have to spend more money on your dog, either this dog or a future dog? And this is the other question too, right? So yeah, this dog is senior depending on German Shepherd. Like, this is definitely more of a senior dog for this dog breed, especially. Is this your last dog? Are you going to get another dog? Is she going to let you get another dog? Questions. This is probably worth considering couples counseling about. Absolutely. Since she's not speaking to you and you have very different priorities, yeah, you need some like mediation here. Sometimes people stay in long-term relationships just because they've been in them for so long that starting over seems daunting. This is sunk cost fallacy, and why it's a fallacy is because it is incorrect. It is fundamentally not true. Just because you have spent so much time or money or energy on something, it doesn't mean that the automatic right choice is to continue that path or to continue to do so. Make sure you find a way to compromise if you're truly determined to stay with her. And deleted user replies to that comment saying, not just a dog. This is not about the dog, but about things that are very important to him and insignificant to her. Yeah, this is important, guys. Like, this is when you're in a relationship with someone, it is very unlikely that you are going to care about the exact same things that they do and vice versa to the same degree that they do. But what makes a good and healthy relationship is to be able to still care about their feelings, like irrespective of whether or not that thing is worth it to you, is important to your partner, so you should be supporting them. Yeah, and this user just says, this is a big red flag. There are frivolous expenses and there are things that are very important to SB, maybe like support. Not sure. Summer and Tinkle's BFF. It seems like she's more upset that he didn't even discuss it with her. He made a huge purchase without considering her feelings on the matter or even talking to her about it first. Everyone is saying she's horrible, but at the same time, he never gave her the chance to think about it and say, okay, let's do the surgery. Because on a realistic level, cancer in dogs is almost always a death sentence. Chemo does not remove it. It only extends their lifespan by a short while, and usually they are miserable. He's already 10 years old, and many dogs of that old of a large breed do not handle surgery well. There are lots of pros and cons. So to that point, I think unless the Reddit user here is a vet, I know I'm not a vet. So in terms of whether or not this assertion that it's not worth it to treat cancer in senior dogs, I'm not quick to agree with that. I think if you trust your vet is a good and ethical vet, and they're telling you to do the surgery, then you should do the surgery. Because if you have a good and responsible and ethical vet, they will tell you when it's not worth it to do the surgery, when it's not in your dog's best interest. But let's continue with their comment. But he never even included her in the decision at all for such a large amount of money right before they're getting married. It does have red flags all over it from both sides. In my opinion, realistically, they definitely need to talk it out before getting married. It seems as though her opinions on the matter mean nothing to him, and he was going to do what he was going to do regardless. Hence why he never discussed such a large financial issue with her prior to surgery. He didn't care what she would think about it regardless. This is his dog, and very clearly his dog, not their dog, by the way that the fiancé is acting. The OP has the responsibility to take care of their dog because that is what they signed up for when they got the dog. I would agree that it would make sense to speak with your partner about it first, not necessarily for permission, but just more so for collaboration and support. That's the other thing I feel like some of these users are missing as well. Like, if you were in a good and healthy relationship, irregardless of your certainty around making a decision, you would still go to your partner to be like, hey, this is the situation, like, this is what I'm going to do, but give me your thoughts. I would really appreciate your support. So the fact that they didn't do that is also, to me, indicating some cracks in the relationship. And again, even more so, if you were at the point of getting married, a lot of times that dog would not be the OP's dog. That dog would have been the couple's dog at that point. So the fact that the German Shepherd is not is already quite telling. And so therefore, if the dog continues to only have one owner, the OP, why would the OP consult the other person? That might be a hot take, but like, yeah, you know what I mean? It's an interesting one. I just think that I don't know why these two are together. Let's scroll down. Jaxie Millie says, yeah, to me, a dog is part of the family. That's a higher priority than having a fancy wedding. And so again, this comes a lot down to priorities when it comes to finances, when it comes to morality, when it comes to so many things that I don't know that this is like a compromisable area, to be completely honest with you. She may have been raised with different values regarding what having a pet means. And this is what I was saying, like, people have different degrees of how they view pets. And before someone comes to argue about, people are thinking too highly or not highly enough, etc., it is a personal thing. And I will say also, this applies to children as well. So for everyone that comes in with people are putting too much effort into their dogs or not enough effort into the dogs, I caution you against making such blanket statements because people raise their children differently as well. And for a lot of these things, aside from, legalities around following the letter of law with respect to abuse and neglect and, what is in the being's best interest, I don't think people should be commenting on how others choose to raise other beings unless you want those fingers pointed back at you. I don't want to hear any comments from people who fall into rules for thee but not for me camp on this. That's all I'll say on this matter. A deleted user replies to that one saying, it depends how much value you place on extending a 10-year-old dog's life for another 2 to 3 years. Knowing the operation could fail and you essentially just threw away that money down the drain with nothing to show for it, but for a dead dog that was dying anyway. So again, this to me, showing me a bit of a lack of empathy here, and which they acknowledged because they say it's cold, but sometimes you have to be logical rather than emotional when it comes to finances. It also depends on how you value money and your family pets. Semi-nerdy girl says, agree to counseling. Her stonewalling you is a huge red flag for the health of the relationship. It's considered one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse of relationship killing traits, according to John Gottman's research, along with contempt, criticism, and defensiveness. Nip that in the bud now. Ruvel replies to a different comment about the OP having different values from their girlfriend and exploring that before they get married. And Ruvel says, different values is a good phrase here. I have 2 dogs. One of them may have cancer. We haven't fully investigated it as she's old, 12. Breed average is 14. I've had dogs for over 33 years. Some died as young as 2, others 6 to 7, others the full lifespan. Dogs never last as long as you'd like. Yeah, and this is so true. This dog is a bit younger, but the breed standard life expectancy is a bit less. He may have bought her a couple years, but there's going to be a fair amount of chemo in there as well, which a dog wouldn't understand. Just giving a different perspective here, it's OP's savings and he should be able to do what he likes. And I hate her reaction is to blow it on a wedding. Pesky Stabber replies to that message saying, just want to point out that this is speculation. Their German Shepherd had breast cancer and the tumors removed without getting any chemo. Our vet, like the one above, allowed that removing a tumor isn't a permanent fix because the dog is likely to develop more tumors. That said, it could take 6 months or 2 years for another to develop. Their dog did get a few more tumors, but they were slow to grow, and in the end, the dog died of age issues, not breast cancer. That said, I found it strange that the OP and the fiance didn't talk about the vet or the bill until after the fact. Seems that communication is a big issue here. I would immediately talk to my SO, not because I was concerned about the cost, but because I love the dog and want to share what's been happening. Yeah, that's why I was saying earlier, like, irrespective of like the finance issues, like the fact that these two don't go to each other when something big and emotional is happening is concerning, considering that they are considering marriage. This user would suggest premarital counseling to work on the communication. Having been married 17 years, I can say poor communication is the number one reason for any arguments that we have had. And that is where we'll call it a day on this story. Let me know your thoughts below. I'm particularly curious to see what other people think the biggest issue is. And like I said, like people might disagree on the value of a dog's life. I obviously value it quite highly, but even the weird financial situation, the lack of communication, the lack of support, I'm like, is this the first big fight they've ever had? So maybe not ready for marriage? I don't know. But this next story is from a deleted user, which is always interesting. It can go a few different ways. And it's titled, "My fiance is calling off the wedding if I don't get rid of my dog." Well, it's as the title says, I've had Trisha, my pit bull, for 4 years. She used to be abused and is very protective of me. She is rarely friendly with strangers. I met Sam 3 years ago. He is wonderful. He is handsome, caring, and loving. He does well, and I am in love with him. Unfortunately, he isn't a fan of pit bulls because of past trauma, and that's hard. Yeah, getting over dog trauma can be quite difficult. However, since we work so well together, he was willing to overcome this. However, last week he went to pick up a loose ball on the floor. This is Trisha's favorite ball, and she went for him and bit him straight on the hand. It was a nasty bite, and he required multiple stitches. They've been together with 3 years as well, fiancés. I'm just curious if like an incident like this has ever come up before. Maybe they'll tell us. I would have like, if the bite risk was present, I would have maybe suggested muzzle training and having her muzzled in the house, just because especially like you hate for injuries to happen, and depending on where you live, there's X number of strikes you're out when it comes to behaviorally euthanizing a dog. So this is one strike against Trisha as well, and your poor fiance. It was a nasty bite. He required multiple stitches. The doctor told him she was very close to losing his finger. I've tried to apologize. Trisha has never done this before. Yeah, and that's especially hard. It's like, rarely friendly with strangers. He's not a stranger anymore, and she's never done this before. Like the dog's never bitten anybody, I guess, before. OP's fiance was very pissed and told me it's him or the dog. He cannot live with an animal which could bite him at any time, even though it only happened once. It's like, OP, you gotta be empathetic. You made the decision to get into a relationship with someone that has trauma around pit bulls, and your pit bull bit him and he almost lost his finger. So the only happened once is kind of downplaying it like a little bit here, Trish is still young. 4 years old, and at 6 she's had the pit bull for 4 years. It looks like, okay, so Trish is still young. He said he doesn't want to have to wait till she passes to have kids. He told me he was beyond scared of the dog and was willing to call it quits over it. He's been staying with friends ever since. I don't know what to do. I can't give up Trisha, but my fiance is not open to conversing. I don't want to lose him. What should I do? TLDR, my fiance was bitten by a dog and told me to get rid of it. So this is super tough, but I do agree with your fiance that in Trisha's current state, it would not be super safe to have kids at this point. I'm going to do a quick look because I don't think pit bulls have particularly low lifespan. And it's tough too because like as much as there's a stigma around pitties, they can be such sweet and loving dogs. So the American Pit Bull Terrier, their lifespan seems to be between 8 and 15 years, given a quick Google search. Like, Trish might be around for like another amount of her lifetime, well over double. I would be very concerned with having kids in a house with a dog that has bitten someone to the point where they had to get multiple stitches, and they were close to losing a finger. That there's something called a bite scale that we take a look at in dog training, and this isn't a like a low level bite. This is a concerning bite. So I can totally hear where the fiance is coming from. The ultimatum is super tough. What's also super tough is that with that bite history, it is very unlikely that Trish would get adopted. So if OP did surrender Trish, it is very likely that the next stop would be euthanasia at a shelter, because once you have a bite history, it can be very hard to adopt a dog out. Yeah, it's a very tough situation. I don't know if OP worked with a trainer previously. I would have suggested working with a trainer, 3 years ago, 4 years ago when you first got her and she was being protective of you and not friendly towards strangers. And then with Sam, yeah, it is just a tough situation. And there's a lot of information missing, right? Because say if somebody came to me with this situation asking for a behavior consult, I would have a bunch of additional questions. For instance, what is rarely friendly with strangers? Is this reactive and barking? Is this standoffish? Is this the only incident that Sam has ever had with Trish? And then frequently the dog owners may or may not know because they might not be well versed in dog body language or behavior patterns. So they might not be able to identify that, oh, actually, this pattern started happening this many months or years ago. Does she have any sort of resource guarding? By that, I mean, is she protective over objects and people? Because she's protective over OP. It sounds like Trisha's favorite ball is the inciting incident where she went to go bite OP's fiance over this. Has she been protective of that ball in the past? I would just have a series of follow-up questions, and it's hard for me to say with 100% certainty this is the way to move forward from here, because there is so much complexity. Needing to understand the behavior history, knowing what OP wants to do, like, is the priority her relationship or her dog or some sort of compromise? Because if these two were to reconcile and stay in a relationship, one of my recommendations would be to employ an abundance of caution with various management and training and safety tools. So things like having her muzzled, making sure that anything that should be prone to resource guarding, like her favorite ball, isn't even an option to be out while we're working on building these new behaviors, etc., etc. But let's go to comments, right? A deleted user says, I'm sorry, but a bite that requires multiple stitches is something that I couldn't get over either. I'm almost always on the side of the pet owner, but I would never live with a dog that had attacked me like that. No amount of training or kenneling or whatever would ever make me feel safe again. I completely see where he is coming from. Yeah, and this is the other thing too, is could management and training improve the situation? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that the person that was attacked would be feeling safe. If you can't give her up, it sounds like the relationship is over. If you decide you want to be with him, you could reach out and see if there's any other rescues or trainers or other situations that would be open to rehoming a dog with a history of serious bites. And yeah, like I said, that will be really, really tough. No thanks, and then some. I love that username. Says, I'm with user naps are my favorite on this, which I don't know if that's a deleted user, maybe, or somebody else on the sub. I too will almost always be on the side of the pet and pet owner, but we're not just talking about a small incident here. We're talking about a major, relatively unprovoked incident that could have lost your fiance his finger. This isn't something you can just brush off, chalk it down to, oh, the dog grew up in a poor conditions, forgive and forget. The other thing that I would be very interested to know too is, and again, that's why the behavior history is so important. If it is out of the blue, then the first course of action, and the first course of action anyways, would be to go see a vet to see if there's any medical reasons behind this. Because sometimes when dogs can do really weird and sometimes like aggressive behaviors like this, it is an indication of pain. But I don't have enough information to say that that is likely or not likely the case here. Your RA resource says, I love dogs, pit bulls included. I expected to come in thinking that it wasn't fair for Sam to drop this on you now after 3 years, but that's not the situation here. The dog is poorly trained and clearly a risk to your partner and others. It is a fair ultimatum, and unfortunately, Sam should be your choice, and you should try rehoming the dog. Yeah. Deleted user says, you said in a different comment that you were planning to have kids with him. What do you think would happen when the baby wants to play with the ball for some reason? This is the thing. I just think that there needs to be a lot of training and management and there should have been more so even prior to this situation, with certain assumptions that I'm making based off of the owner's assertion that she was abused and protective and unfriendly with strangers. But that's only me kind of reading between the lines. We can't confirm or deny. But yeah, I think this is very clearly a situation where probably like the right choice would be to stay with your fiance. But I would be having a conversation with him around, are you guys never going to get a dog again? If you're going to get a dog, maybe some more thought into the right dog for your lifestyle, work with a trainer early, learn a bit more about managing different behaviors. And it might just be that, especially since you guys are planning to have kids, that just might not be your priority right now. But yeah, I just also, it would not be fair to the children or to Trisha to bring kids into this situation. Alrighty, moving on to, okay. I have to apologize because very clearly it was not Am I the A-hole subreddit. Clearly, I put this together under r/relationship advice, so apologies. All of the stories today are from that subreddit instead. But let us move on to the next story in the r/relationship advice subreddit, and it is from Piper Dear. Hello, Piper Dear. Their story is entitled, My Fiancé, 27 male, basically chose our dog over me, 27 female. What a waste of 5.5 years. Okay, I'm already more interested and invested in this one than some of the previous ones because our dog, not his dog. You know what I mean? So I'm curious, and I'm also curious of like, what's the situation where your partner is choosing your dog over you? You know, I'm like, okay, I'm just curious. So first post ever, so please bear with me. My fiance and I have been together for 5.5 years and have lived together for 2.5 years. A year ago, we adopted a dog and didn't get much history on him. Yeah, and for those that know, I completely understand, and I kind of know where the story is going now. Lo and behold, the dog turned out to be a neurotic, anxious mess who makes huge messes. He's a very sweet dog, but has ruined our carpets, my couches, and has managed to break 2 windows. Oh, I really hope that they've been to like a vet or something too, because, well, right away, especially since the dog's been around for a year, I would have recommended many a management and training techniques prior to this point as well. I understand the carpets and the couches. That sounds very, I wouldn't say normal, but like can be quite common for dogs that are very anxious and left alone and things like that. But the 2 windows, I'm like, oh my gosh, how much was this dog freaking out that he broke these windows? And we will see what if we get like more info. I'm operating under the assumption that the owners weren't home when the dog was freaking out, because or else like I think even if you didn't notice like the carpets or maybe even the couch, I feel like you would notice the window being broken. So one window breaking incident occurred yesterday, at which time I decided it's best to rehome him. I'm also just so curious. I don't think it said so far, but like also what dog breed. So OP's fiance loves the dog very much, as does the fiance's son. I'm not a heartless person who just rips dogs away from families and vice versa. I truly love animals, and I feel that I have given more chances to keep the dog than what pushes crazy. My fiance agreed that we rehome the dog, but has been very distant to me since, not talking, laying in bed, etc. Well, tonight we got into an argument that has led to me leaving for the night, maybe longer, as it is his house and he can kick me out, call the cops on me, whatever. I'm assuming that the fiance didn't do that, like kick OP out or call the cops, but just saying that like it's the fiance's house, not hers. So if they're gonna get into a fight and someone has to leave, it's gonna be her, which I completely agree with because it is his house and it sounds like his kiddo, who I don't know lives full time or not. Again, didn't get into the story with kiddo, but the fiance has a son, and that would be the son's house too. OP says, I just need to know, am I a horrible, crazy person for wanting to rehome the dog? Is the dog so much more important than a 5-year relationship that has created a family? Am I selfish? I have no idea what to think or feel right now. No matter what I do, I'm stuck. If I get rid of the dog, he'll resent me. If I agree to keep the dog, it will be the same cycle of stress and unhappiness by the destruction being caused in the home. Side note, the dog has been in behavioral courses. So it sounds like they probably worked with a trainer. I'm not quite sure what like behavioral courses constitutes as. But it sounds like a lot more training probably some medication in this case. I'm assuming that if you got the dog from a rescue, that at the very least the dog went to the vet beforehand. Yeah, this is a tough one. I'm not sure that I am firm on my opinion yet, one way or another, because also I'm not saying that one behavioral issue is more severe or cause for friction than another, but it sounds like the dog is really sweet and most of this seems to be anxiety related. The dog's not having any issues with the fiance's son, who obviously is young and a child. We don't know ages of the kiddo, but given the fact that both the OP and her fiance are 27 years old, clearly the kid is on the younger side, not like a teen or anything like that. So like the dog was not having any issue, it looks like, with like reactivity or aggression. It doesn't mention anything about like dog to dog issues or anything like that. The only thing that is mentioned in this post is things that can fall under like the separation anxiety and related issues umbrella, which is obviously like, just so hard for the pupper. Like clearly the dog is in severe emotional distress going through this. And so let's see what some of the Redditors have to say. So Cats and Caffeine 89 says, I feel like you just don't get rid of pets unless they've literally attacked you, especially if there's a kid involved. My mom went through more pets than I can count when I was a kid, and it kind of screwed me up for a while. Maybe the dog needs more time in behavioral courses or different behavioral courses. Maybe a vet can make recommendations. Maybe he needs more time to run and play outside. Yeah, and this is something that I address in a lot of my training programs is like we really don't have enough information here to get the full picture. Like my immediate assumption given the behaviors presented was that the dog has some sort of anxiety issue, but we don't have information around like the dog's breed and age or anything either. And like, granted, they didn't have much of a history on the dog. They've had the dog for a year. We don't know how old the dog is. We don't know what the breed of the dog is. How much exercise is this dog getting, etc. Like how long, if any, are you leaving the dog home alone? So much missing info. And so a lot of what I do at the beginning of my programs is to take a look at, okay, like what does your life look like? What does your dog's life look like? What are the behaviors that were being presented? And then let's build a plan from there. You really need to take a systems thinking approach to these things because it is super easy to be like, the dog has issues. We need to train them. Take one step further. Oh, the dog actually has anxiety. So in addition to training, here's some behavior modification we need to do, and let's speak to the vet about potentially medicating the dog. Oh, and also feeding into the anxiety, another layer is that the dog's needs aren't being met. So therefore we should be doing this, this, and this to kind of change some of the lifestyle. And these all feed into each other. You know what I mean? Yeah, it is tough, but this user continues saying that I'm willing to bet your fiance would forgive you. He's had exactly a couple of days to emotionally process this. Imagine your partner coming up to you and being like, hey, dear, our dog who's like this very anxious but sweet little being, they freaked out again and destroyed the carpet and couches or they just broke a window and I am like, I've had it with them. The dog is out. And I'm like, oh, if the dog broke the window, like, is the dog okay? Did the dog go to the vet? Did they need stitches? Like, broken window equals glass? Like, I get that the OP is very stressed, but I also, as the partner in the situation, would also be concerned around, like, lack of empathy about the dog's well-being. Not even saying, like, the destruction stuff, but, like, even the specific instance of the straw that broke the camel's back. In this case, being the broken windows, which could be quite dangerous to the pupper. This user also says that, like, the fiance knows that this would be hurting the kid as well and is advising OP to cut their fiance some slack on this. And to be fair, you could also say you're prioritizing stress over a dog, over a 5.5-year relationship, and a child's happiness. So there's multiple perspectives. Otherwise, Window says, here's the thing. In the view of many people, if you adopt a pet, is now your responsibility for life. Is it neurotic? Cope until you learn how to soothe it. An animal with a history of abuse can take a while to recover. It's expensive. Yes, pets can be expensive, but you made a commitment. You don't dispose of family members when they become inconvenient or irksome. Yeah, some people feel differently, but that's a fundamental incompatibility because people who take the pets are family view consider the pets are disposable people to be soulless a-holes as a rule. Particularly if by rehome you mean dump at a shelter, well, he'll either be killed or live a miserable, abandoned life, as opposed to carefully select a loving new home where he will be kept. Yeah, so that's the other thing too, is we don't know what rehoming looks like to OP in this situation. OP responds to that user and says, I never said he was a monetary issue or that we have not tried to help the dog, and I am taking rehoming him very seriously. I do not hate animals, nor do I make it a habit to rehome them. He is my first, and I've owned plenty. Uh, I'm assuming that OP means that this is the first animal she's had that she's rehoming and that she's owned plenty of animals in the past. All I want is this in this situation is for him to go to a home where somebody will dote on him and give him the one-on-one attention he deserves. We do not expect that there would be any issue when we adopted him. If we had, we wouldn't have picked him. Again, I don't make a habit out of rehoming my pets. This is where I'm going to plug one of my services, not so that you can work with me specifically, but just so you know that these things exist. There are things called canine matchmakers and many a trainer that will help you pick out your dog. This could be puppies from reputable breeders. This could be helping you pick out your next shelter dog from a rescue. Because a lot of people find themselves in situations where they have dogs that they're not in a position to care for, or it's a harder situation that they think. And some of this could have been avoided if they had sought some additional help before deciding to bring home a dog. So, yeah, more research. If you think you've researched enough before you bring home a dog, double it and do more and more research, because there is just so many things to consider. Okay. So otherwise, Window replies again to OP's comment to their reply saying, so what? He wasn't neurotic at all before you got him? What changed? Seriously, who's abusing that dog? Because if it's your fiance or his son, you might be want to be the one initiating the split. Deleted user jumps on that saying that could be OP that's abusing the dog and saying that they make it a rule to never 100% believe what someone says on these posts now, especially if the person is biased as hell. I don't necessarily agree. It's not giving abuse to me, but I could be wrong in their current situation. I will also say a lot of people think that their dog that was a rescue was abused. I'm not saying that this isn't the case. It can definitely happen, but a lot of dogs end up in rehoming situations due to behavioral issues like this one that people excuse due to abuse or perceived abuse in their history. It's neither here nor there around whether or not a dog was abused in their past. It's more important to take a look at what are their behaviors, what is the root cause, and how can we fix them. For some of these, it might just be some dogs are more neurotic than others. And this we can see this in humans, right? Like some dogs have a genetically predisposition to behaving in such a way that can be activated by certain catalysts, this, that, and the other thing. Behavior modification can exist across species. I'm not going to get into a TED Talk on all of that, but I just want to say, and we'll see if OP gives us any more details. A lot of times people will say that they adopted an abused rescue dog, and sometimes that is the case. But sometimes that dog was just a rescue dog for a variety of different reasons. Just because a dog comes from a rescue or shelter does not mean that they inherently have abuse in their history. Let us see. OP responds saying that the dog's been neurotic since they got him. He is not abused at all in our home. I can promise that. We took him to training classes and kept saying one more chance until it's gone to too much. Okay. So also training classes might be your problem there as well. Depends on what they're actually doing, and different trainers can structure things differently. When I think training classes, my brain jumps to puppy classes or foundational obedience. There are definitely reactive dog training classes, but given the information we're given here, this looks like it's more anxiety induced behavior, so they would have been better off working one-to-one with a behavior consultant most likely. And OP clarifies that they have no idea what his history was before they got him. He's terrified of thunder, but aren't most dogs. Otherwise, Window replies to that comment saying, then you definitely accepted this responsibility when you got him. And I can absolutely understand why your fiancé might be rethinking his relationship with you. After all, what happens if his son goes through a difficult stage? Will you insist on boarding school? This user, I think, is kind of going off on one a little bit because not everybody equates. I see what they're saying because definitely it can be a red flag when people are showing a lack of empathy or commitment to dogs. and we can conflate that to that of children. But some people just do have a cognitive dissonance where they just put, kids in one category, dogs in another. So it's not a great indication of behavior because it just assumes that people have empathy towards both groups, and that is not always the case. OP responds to that comment saying, "Okay, you are a lovely person. I tried to rescue a dog and it's not working, but I'm going to try to make it work, even though I know it won't work. I expect the same result. Isn't that the definition of insanity? That's fine. I'll make sure to let him know because I couldn't help him find a new home where he can be with someone 24/7 because someone on Reddit thinks that I'm a bad dog owner." Cats and Caffeine comes in to this saying the definition of insanity is repeating the same action over and over again, expecting a different result. These two are a little over the top, and I don't believe you're abusing the dog, but you also ignored some pretty valid questions posed by somebody not being totally unreasonable, which makes me think you guys haven't exhausted your options to try to make this work. That's your prerogative, but husband's definitely perfectly within his rights to not be happy about it. Sandkar4 says, take him to his vet. He may have separation anxiety or something like that, and they do have meds for that. My baby is on anti-anxiety medication, and she's a lot calmer. OP said, we rehomed him back in August, and I can honestly say he's flourishing. He is with a retired couple, and they have another dog who has become his absolute best friend. We love him and miss him, but I wanted nothing more than for him to be happy. I know that it made my fiancé and son sad, but we've all seen how much better he's doing now, and it makes it all better. And so obviously they end up doing the best thing for the dog, that the dog found a family that is in a better position to give him what he needs. And I would just encourage OP or others like OP that find themselves in similar situations to learn from your mistake and speak with a professional prior to bringing home a dog in the future to ensure that you're finding one that is actually a good match for your family. So that way your family is not sad and disappointed when you have to rehome your dog in the future. And this is a super common thing where especially people who get dogs from rescues, which is wonderful and such an amazing thing that people do just have such these big hearts to do. Keep in mind, not always, but very frequently, a lot of dogs in rescues are there because of various incompatibility issues for one reason or another. There are always exceptions, but a lot of these times, and it's super common, you'll see a lot of dogs in the canine adolescent stage because this is when a lot of times behavioral issues do come up for them. And so I think just more education to the public of knowing what you're getting into before you get a dog. And again, there are always exceptions. There's always situations where things are just better. But yeah, I'm really happy that the dog found a family that is in a good position. Retired couple, and they have another dog who became his absolute best friend. This to me, reading between the lines, seems like a hypothetical of this situation was that OP and her partner worked outside the home. They had a dog with separation anxiety and who maybe also was dealing with some underconfidence issues and maybe too much energy. This is solved by the dog's new home because the retired couple is probably consistently at home very often. There's another dog who has become his best friend, and especially if that other dog is stable, the OP's old dog is able to kind of borrow some of the confidence and take their cues from that other dog in the home. Oftentimes in the training world, we call this a mentor dog. And if that other dog is his best friend and they're playing and all that jazz, that's also expending that additional energy. So back to what I was saying previously is it was fundamentally an incompatibility issue, and it took a systems approach in order to address the situation. And that is why, in all likelihood, that dog found better success in that other family is because even without making changes, they were just able to provide solutions to the variety of problems that dog was facing. This situation does not make the OP an inherently bad dog owner by any means. This, to me, says most likely that the OP's previous pets likely didn't suffer from large amounts of behavior issues and or they didn't get the right kind of professional support to help them determine what changes actually needed to make. And this is a tale as old as time in the dog training industry. If you talk to any dog trainer, they'll be able to tell you tens of hundreds of stories of situations like this. So it is unfortunately not new. And my hope is in the future for everyone to be getting the right kind of training help as quickly as possible, and for more thought to be put into what kind of dog is actually going to be the right fit for what kind of home. Bringing home a dog is like a combination of bringing home a partner and a child. Like, they are your responsibility. You need to pay for them. You need to ensure their well-being. You need to raise or train and guide them, feed them, all that kind of stuff. But compatibility is very similar. So similar to the process of when you are shopping for a partner, for romantic love interest, whatever that looks like for you, there are some ways that, you don't need to be the exact same, but you need to be able to have a complementary lifestyle. Like, your dog is, you have a relationship with them. They're your roommate. They're like your kiddo. They're living in your space. You need to be able to cohabitate, and you need to be able to have shared hobbies and interests and be able to coexist. And taking a look at that dog in the previous story, if that dog had a dating profile and was looking for humans, that dog was likely looking at a home where they could have a lot of company a lot of the time, somebody who was able to understand his anxiety needs and how to address them, some additional company with like either humans or dog friends, and to be able to expend more energy. And that is what he found in his second home. And so I hope that is going to be his forever home. Okay, our last story from the r/relationship advice subreddit today is from Significant Boot 6446. I, 21 male, and my fiance, 21 female's relationship is being ruined by our dog. Okay, all right. We will see how this goes. So I, 21 male, and my fiance, 21 female, have been together almost 4 years. I bought a house and we moved in together back in January, and we got engaged back in May. So 21, so they were like high school sweethearts. They got together in high school, right? So 21, 17, like seniors in high school-ish. So they've been together for 4 years, but the wording is the OP, who's the 21 male in this situation, he's the one with the house. They moved in together to the house back in January, and they got engaged back in May. This story was actually posted 3 months ago, so has not been that long. We got a dog back at the end of March, Bernese Mountain Dog, and I think the decision was very impulsive. Okay. I grew up with a family of people with allergies, so I never had any pets except for a cat. So that made me always want a big dog. Okay, so many things. Size of dog is not necessarily an indication of things like how difficult a dog will be to train and how much energy a dog has, etc., etc., etc. There's such a variety within the different breed groups. But for somebody that's never had a dog before, I'm not gonna say that the Bernese is a bad first choice, but like in all cases, let's do some research. Did you look into various health implications? Did you factor in the larger dogs are just less portable than the smaller dogs, which is, don't get me wrong, I love working with Bernese and Newfies and Great Danes and all these things. But the dog owners of those breeds just have some like considerations that I, with my like Cavalier, don't have to have with respect to like spatial issues and how difficult it may or may not to be bring them spaces depending on other people's reaction. Just like these things we need to think about before we bring home dogs. We were on a puppy website and saw him, and we ended up getting him a few days later because he was so cute. Yeah, that's where I thought this story was going. Okay, I don't know if this was from like a breeder, like a backyard breeder, or like pet finder rescue or what have you, but whatever it is, I am inclined to think that it was not a reputable source because of the fact that you went on a website, saw him, and got him a few days later because he was so cute. Most reputable sources of dogs will have you fill out applications, whether or not that's a rescue or a breeder. They will have you fill out things like, what your employment looks like and how much time you have to spend with the dog. Do you have experience with this breed? What are you going to do with the dog, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Some will even have like reference and background checks. So the fact that there was such a few days turnaround time tells me that that was probably not the case in this process. And so probably not a reputable place to source your pup. So the girlfriend in this scenario of OP grew up with dogs, and so she had a better idea of what she was getting into and doing, getting back into this as OP. First off, he has terrible separation anxiety, and we both work full time. So, like, they're all going to have some levels of separation anxiety to start because you need to train them of it and work their way. A lot of times, if you get, again, a dog from, say, a reputable breeder, that training process starts earlier. OP says we tried to crate train him when we first got him, but he would drool, poop, pee, puke, and fling it all over the room. We then tried to give him more space and let him walk around a room while we were gone so he didn't feel trapped, but he would just do the same thing and start destroying the house. I'm sorry, I'm just laughing because this is like, yeah, like normal puppy behaviors. So this little Bernese Mountain Dog puppy ate the casing around the doors, the baseboard, the corner of the walls, the pillows, and after eating the stuff, he shits all over the house for days and days after. So we recently decided he's going back in the crate permanently, but he is so big and strong now that she can't even put him in the crate, so I have to do it, which makes me late for work every morning. Yeah. So training. You need to train your puppy. The other thing is she doesn't discipline him at all. It's always me. What is disciplining? Are we hitting dogs over here? I don't have a good feeling about this. I'm always the one having to get on him and tell him not to do things, to sit, stop biting, jumping, barking, begging for food, chewing on stuff. She babies him all the time. He posted this 3 months ago, so I don't know if it was like a repost or something. Got the dog at the end of March. So I'm assuming the dog, like the last March, so close to a year old at this point, but minus 3 months. So I think at the time that OP is writing this, the dog is in adolescence at this point, hence the so big and strong. OP says he does something wrong and she babies him when I tell him no. So it's at the point where I will yell at him and he just goes and hides behind her because he knows she will reinforce his bad behavior. Yeah, don't love the yelling at the dog. It sounds like he needs more training and more communication and clarity because he doesn't understand what he is supposed to do. OP says he's a perfect angel when it's just the two of us at home, but as soon as she's home, it's free for all. This is also a very, very common thing when there are multiple people in the house with the dog. A lot of unwanted behaviors can be unintentionally reinforced by not everyone following the same rules. So one of the things that I help my clients with is making sure everyone's on the same page with what the rules are for the dog, what are the cues, what to do, what not to do, what the dog's responding to. Dogs are maximizers and they will try to get away with what they can, not in a malicious sense, but purely they'll do whatever works. And so it also causes the dog a lot of confusion when there's like rules with one person and not another. And then you're yelling at the dog for not following the rules, but the rules aren't actually the rules because they're not always enacted in place. So OP says, I made this choice and I wasn't ready. Sometimes I feel like she loves the dog more than me. Okay, so a bit of ego bruising here too. I've lost all my patience to the point where I'm getting angry at him for the small things he does now. Yeah, that's not good. We got into an argument last night and she scolded me by telling me I'm too mean to him and I'm traumatizing him because how often I have to tell him no and to stop doing bad things. She said she isn't going to allow me to make him miserable for his whole life. And I said to her, he's making me miserable. And she said, we're just going to have to deal with it. I really feel like she loves this dog more than me. I want to get rid of him. She says it's not an option. I rushed into this and it's ruining everything. I don't know what to do. He's huge, smells like poop, drools all the time, makes messes, and it's just a nuisance in my life. Does anyone have any advice on what to do? Yeah, sounds like you weren't ready for puppyhood. The dog needs training and you guys need to be on the same page. It's also tough because we can only go with what OP says here. So definitely we have an unreliable narrator because it's is he too harsh with the dog or is she too inconsistent? Like, what is the actual situation? Yelling at the dog, not great. And yelling at the dog to the point where the dog is running away from you to hide behind somebody else? Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not going to jump to like abuse or anything like that. This is definitely a conversation and why I insist if there are multiple people in the home with the dog, especially partners, like I'm working with both of you guys because we need to get on the same page and I need to know what exactly is going on here because clearly we have two different stories in these different people's heads going on. Opie has an edit. She also says that since she grew up with dogs, it's a non-negotiable that her kids do also. She says if I don't want dogs, then it's a problem. I'm just so lost on what to do and I have nobody to talk to on this. It sounds like one or both of you probably like isn't willing to put in the training necessary to help raise the dog in a way that like the behavior is both good for you guys and the dog. It's also a little bit of a red flag in my mind that, yeah, it's just tough right now and you're wanting to give up. It's like not even just a like, should you have this dog? But maybe for OP, maybe he just shouldn't have any dogs because unlike the previous stories, dog's not bitching anyone. It's not reactive to dogs and humans. The separation anxiety is definitely tough, but it sounds like that wasn't nipped in the bud when it needed to. So now it's just a habit that needs to fix, and that will be a process, but definitely possible. And given that this is more of a, well, this is difficult, so I'm not willing to do it, could be a red flag for how involved will you be with raising your kiddos. Yeah, it is just tough. TLDR, my fiance and I have a dog that is ruining our relationship because he has ridiculous anxiety and she has not been consistent whatsoever in his training. Unlike me, I don't know what to do. And that's the other thing too, how you are blaming it all on her and not taking any responsibility for yourself. So how, I don't know. It doesn't say great things about the relationship, but let's see what others say. I am not even sure how to pronounce this. Uchi Supi says it's time to pay to take training classes with your pup. Yeah, absolutely. It's important that both of you are at every class to learn how to train him and keep up with commands. Yes, yes, yes. The separation anxiety can be trained of most of the time. Correct. You and your partner also need to get on the same page and learn how to train the dog. Consistency is key. Yep. Yep, yep, yep. This is above your pay grade, and it's time to bring on an experienced trainer to help with your dog. Plenty of Fizz in the Z says, nope, these guys shouldn't have a dog. If you're both out a full workday, that's too long. Getting an enormous dog with zero experience should be unlawful. He's a puppy, needs stimulation. And when he's an adult, he'll need more company than you can offer. This person is stretching a little bit with some of these things, but is correct that puppies are a lot of work. They're a lot of work. A lot of people underestimate how much puppies actually need. A lot of times for a first-time dog, I would recommend people get an adult dog. Then you know what their personality is already. They've already got some training built in. You don't have to deal with the crazy puppy phase. And a lot of times you can find some amazing breeders that are retiring dogs due to either the dog not being a good fit for their breeding program or that dog is finished having litters and things like that. And that can be a really great way, again, when you go for the right source, to get like a really well-tempered dog that is pretty well trained and you can skip some of the puppy crazies. Stella Maris says, there's nothing in your post about working with a trainer. That is the first step, and it should have been done months ago. You've had this dog since March. Was it a reputable breeder? I somehow doubt it if they sold a very expensive dog to two 21-year-olds off of the internet within a few days. Legit breeders will vet applicants, and litters are reserved months in advance. Correct. How old was the dog when you got it? Was it taken from its mother too soon? In all caps, get a professional trainer. Do not cheap out on this. The dog deserves better. Yes, your consistency in training involves yelling at the dog. Stop that. Yeah, I completely agree. Agree. Okay, well, that is all we've got for today. Thank you guys for listening to these Reddit stories. I'm very curious from other people's perspective and reactions because obviously I come from my standpoint of being, a major dog lover, professional in the industry. And of course, that inherently, we all have our own biases. I will see you in the next video. And remember to give your dog some scritches for me. Bye now.